So welcome everyone. So my name's Inga Davidson and I'm an occupational therapist with Fife Employment Access Trust. It's lovely to see so many people here today and I hope you've been enjoying the presentations so far. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about how we have implemented cognitive remediation therapy into an employability project called Employer Mind. But before I started, I wanted to just give you a bit of context about the charity that I work for. I know that some of this might be a bit of repetition because Duncan did that earlier, but repetition is a great strategy in CRT, so good example. So Fife Employment Access Trust, or FEAT for short, was established in 1994 by a small group of individuals who were concerned about the lack of job opportunities and support to maintain employment for individuals in Fife with mental health problems. We now have over 20 years of experience of directly supporting individuals in work and to find and sustain employment. And our vision is to enable and support individuals to reach their full positive mental well-being in a culture where there's no stigma. And we do this through the delivery of a number of different projects, and I've just highlighted a number of them here. So we have the Fife IPS service, we're part of a consortium called Fife Etc. We have a project called Silverburn, we also do mindfulness courses, so there's lots of things happening at FEAT. There isn't enough time today for me to talk about all the services, but there's representative here from all the services, so please get networking and start talking to some of the staff at FEAT. So back to our main focus, Employer Mind. So Employer Mind is a partnership project between Fife Employment Access Trust and NHS Fife. And it's a personal development and employability project aimed at individuals with severe and enduring mental health problems. Many of our clients, or students as we like to call them, often don't even feel that they have employability needs. So often the people we're working with are the people that are saying, I can't work, I don't want to work, I won't be able to. So we often describe ourselves as an employability project for people who don't think they have employability needs. So Employer Mind works by the team at FEAT, the Employer Mind team. We take our service to an NHS team and we bolt our service onto an existing NHS team, so like a mental health team. And we deliver it in partnership for the 6-month duration. The project is split into 4 different phases, each phase lasting 6 weeks, and there's 2 weeks between each phase, so our students get 2-week holidays. It's really been designed in this modular way because we understand that for many of our students, starting a 6-month project can be really overwhelming, so that can feel really daunting. So often what we do is we invite our students to just come along for the first phase. So all they're really coming along for is the first kind of 6 weeks of the project. Hopefully by that point they kind of get to know us and they feel a little bit more comfortable to continue the project. NHS Fife staff take a lead in the first phase, so we use NHS Fife venue. They take the lead in identifying clients, supporting attendance, and the first 6 weeks, so phase 1, is delivered in a joint way, so we deliver that together. Phases 2 through to 4, so share your mind, educate your mind, and know your mind, moves on to group work. So it occurs a lot more frequently, so rather than seeing our students once a week, in phases 2 to 4, we're seeing our students 3 times a week, so they're coming in for 3 half-days per week. Our students also have the opportunity to take part in, or to gain an SVQ qualification, level 3 called Steps to Work. And our students are also invited to take part in a supported work experience placement if that's something that they'd like to do. So CRT, So CRT is embedded throughout the project. So in phase 1, we begin to sow the seeds of CRT and we begin to introduce it to our students. But really the main delivery is in phases 2 to 4. And really many of our students have had a negative experience of a learning environment or a work environment. So really the main kind of aim at Employer Mind is to allow our students to experience some success and to create a positive learning environment. So it's a really flexible project where we can do that to meet the needs of our students. And really the overall aim of Employer Mind is to enable our students to explore their work-related goals, to improve their confidence and their skills, to develop strategies to support their cognitive functioning, and by the end of the course to hopefully to be able to use all those skills to go on and access other job-seeking services. So often at the end of Employer Mind, our students might actually be saying, well, actually, maybe I could look at paid work now, so we could refer them on to the Fife IPS service. Okay, so the development of the project. I guess the project really developed out of a need. So we were noticing at FEET a few years ago that we were getting an increasing number of referrals for individuals who had severe mental health difficulties. So the number of those referrals were increasing. But what we were also noticing was that the project that we had at the time, it wasn't really designed to meet their needs. So we would often have individuals maybe coming along for a couple of appointments, but then they would disengage. So the project at the time just wasn't quite flexible enough. There was also a growing body of evidence that Claire talked about earlier with the meta-analysis of the effectiveness of CRT, and there was also emerging information that CRT is much more effective when it's embedded within a wider project. NHS, Fife, OT and clinical psychology have a long history of delivering CRT, but it was quite a limited service. So really, that led us to think about what is the best context for us to expand this service and meet the needs of individuals that have these severe and enduring needs. And from that conversation, that led us to a collaboration between FEET and NHS Fife to submit an application to the big lottery for funding. So thankfully we were successful with that funding, and we were granted 5 years of funding to deliver the project throughout Fife from 2012 to 2017. So I'm going to share our experiences of how we've implemented CRT within Employer Mind by using the themes that were highlighted in Saperstein and Medalia's report that they published in 2012. They were really looking at dissemination and implementation issues, and they described moderators or aspects that strengthen the effect of CRT, as well as how to maximise therapeutic outcomes. So today I'm going to be exploring treatment context, treatment intensity and dosage, as well as talking a little bit about generalisation, personalisation and instructional technique. So putting it a bit more simply, the burning questions are: where do we deliver CRT? How often do we do it? By whom? What software packages are we using? And how do we facilitate generalisation? So a number of factors have been shown to moderate the impact of CRT, including treatment context. So phases 2 to 4 of Employer Mind are delivered at FEET's base in Glenrothes at Hanover Court. We have bright training rooms where we deliver group sessions, and it's a really warm and friendly environment. And the photo on the bottom right-hand corner is the computer rooms or learning arcades where we deliver the computerised CRT. So the treatment context is really important at FEET. We're much less bound by traditional psychiatric services. Bureaucracy and red tape. So I guess even basic things like being able to access lots of different websites, being able to download software that our students are interested in learning to use, or even kind of using memory sticks are all really accessible at FEET. And because CRT is part of a wider project, we can much more readily integrate educational, employability and vocational aspects throughout the course. The project is much more likely to create new contingencies. So we see our students a lot at Employer Mind. They're coming in 3 half days a week, so sometimes we're seeing them 6 hours per week. And the flexibility of our project, we can add in material. So if we're identifying that there's a need, a learning need with our students, then we can create that into the project. So for example, if our students want to learn about how to do mock interviews or learn about how to do first aid, we can look at how we add that into the project. And also with it being a partnership project, there's lots of opportunity for knowledge and experiential exchange between FEAT and NHS Fife. So often we deliver sort of training to each other, or we would have access to each other's sort of training opportunities, as well as being able to create innovations within the project. So one of those innovations was the creation of a sort of student-centred risk assessment called Employer Mind, where the kind of student leads that process, and they keep a copy of that form in their project folder, so they really kind of have ownership of how they want to be supported when they're on the project. Okay, so the project also led to the creation of new posts. So we have 5 learning coaches that deliver the project. And learning coaches are really skilled in the delivery of cognitive remediation therapy, of evaluating individual learning style and assessing task approach. And two of our learning coaches today are facilitating a workshop this afternoon on that role. So you'll be able to learn a little bit more about that if you're going along to that workshop. And as CRT is embedded in the project, we have much more dedicated CRT time. So we aim for 3 30-minute sessions of CRT per week. So not only do we have much more dedicated CRT time, but we also have our students have much more exposure to contextual activities and experiences. So for example, in phase 2 of the project, our students get the opportunity to work on a personal project. So that's really using their interests to develop their self-awareness. And they work towards their SVQ qualification. So it's really using that improved cognitive capacity to develop project work as the course progresses. Okay, so the ultimate goal of CRT is to generalise cognitive gains to enhance functioning. And in Employer Mind, we have plentiful opportunity to build in generalisation through a wide variety of novel tasks and activities. So, for example, we do sessions where we're using, we hire out a hall and we're using remote-controlled cars to demonstrate the learning process and the learning curve. We often do conservation activities, building fires, or learning how to do stop animation or making movies. So there's lots of opportunities to kind of build in these types of activities. And we also encourage personal and peer group review. So we're always inviting our students to not only think about what it is that they're doing, but to think about what they're learning through doing and how that's making them feel and what they've learned about themselves. And really, in Employer Mind, we see it as our role to reinforce the links between cognitive remediation therapy, and everyday functioning. So a fundamental element of effective CRT programmes is that treatment plans are tailored to individual needs. So personalisation in Employer Mind is evident right from the beginning of the project. We're working with a student who has a goal of completing a work experience placement, so that'll help him to progress on to work. We can be saying things like, so it looks like this game is working on planning and organisation. So that's going to come in really handy when you start your work placement next week, when you're having to think about planning how you're going to get there and what you need to organise to take with you on the day. So even in the kind of less formal conversations, we can be demonstrating personalisation. Also, the SVQ work that our students do also supports personalisation. So our students can choose what they do their project on, and that can be anything from in people's interests in renewable energy to music that they like to history. So it can be absolutely anything. Okay. So at Employer Mind, we aim to provide an enjoyable and safe learning experience for our students, so that our students can increase their self-awareness of their learning potential, and that it's okay to have difficulties when we learn. So ultimately, we try to increase our students' motivation by linking in their learning to real-life goals. So we aim to promote an atmosphere of trust and safety, so that our students are able to take more risks so that they can sort of acquire enhanced learning experiences. So maybe by doing something new or doing something that they wouldn't have thought that they would have been able to do before. So really, it's about combining enjoyable learning environments with generalising learning to a situation, linking it back to the student's goals, and providing opportunities for choice. Students are able to increase their motivation and therefore functional outcomes are also enhanced. Okay, so I'm going to talk through each phase of Employer Mind and really look at and demonstrate how we implement CRT within our project. So phase 1 of the project, as I said earlier, it's a 6-week phase. It's individual sessions with students delivered by one of the Employer Mind team and an NHS mental health professional. And really, phase 1 is about the assessment and engagement phase. So we have sessions around exploring our students' interests and values. We do an introduction to CRT. We begin to look at tasks that are encouraging metacognition or thinking about thinking. We're exploring our students' learning style and process, and we also use a standardised functional assessment. In Employer Mind, we use the Canadian Occupational Performance Measure. So just to give you some examples of those, so this is an image of one exercise that we do in phase 1, which is called the Values Ripple. So we have a pack of cards. So these are all sort of individual cards. And we have a big pack of them, and each card has a different value on it with a sort of picture representing that value too. And the student would work through the cards and identify the ones that were important to them. And then we have this big poster, this big ripple that the student then places their values cards somewhere on the ripple, depending on how much opportunity they feel they're getting to live their life in a way that's in keeping with that value. So by helping our students to reconnect with their values, it really helps them to begin to engage in activities that are in keeping with their values and therefore work towards their goals. So it's a really nice kind of starting point for students. What we do is we do this exercise, we take a photo of it, we print it off, we put it in their folder, and it's really nice because we revisit this exercise at the end of the 6 months, and they get to repeat this process, and then they can compare or have a look at if their values have maybe changed over the time that they've been on the project. Another session that we deliver in phase 1 is a questionnaire called How Do I Think? And it's a self-reporting questionnaire, so there's a number of different statements. I've just given you 3 here as an example. So it's things like, I'm good at focusing on the task I'm supposed to be doing, and then the student would rate whether that was always, sometimes, rarely, or never. And then the next one, I can concentrate on watching TV for more than 20 minutes. So our student said sometimes, and then the last one, I have trouble working on more than one thing at a time. So we start to do these questionnaires before we've even started to use any CRT. And really we're just encouraging our students to think about what their thinking strengths are, what thinking skills do they want to improve on, and then we start to sow the seeds. So we start to say, well, maybe CRT can be helpful with helping you to work towards some of these things. And what we find is that often students who maybe don't want to talk about their mental health or talk about symptoms, they're actually very open to talking about their cognitive skills, because it's something that we all have, and it's something that we all identify as, if you're not so good at focusing on something, you can really understand why that makes doing things difficult. So it's a really kind of normalising conversation to have with students. Okay, so moving on to phase 2 of the project. So phase 2 is the first time that our students come together as a group. So it can often be an anxious time for them. So even being in a room with other people, staying for the whole 2-hour session, getting there, these can all be kind of big challenges. So we really like to ease our students in gently with CRT. We're not sort of pushing them too much at this point. So we allow them to try out different types of CRT. We introduce the games record sheet, so again they keep that in their folder, they complete it themselves, so it's a great way of them monitoring their own progress. In phase 2 we deliver 2 bridging sessions, so I'll talk a bit more about those later on. And at the end of the phase we also give our students an end of phase report, and we often email them as well to their CRT accounts to summarise what they've achieved, so they're kind of getting that personal feedback. So this is just an example, they're just screenshots of some of the different types of software that we use. So the ones along the top, these two are from a package called Scientific Brain Training Pro, or Happy Neuron as it's been changed to now. And then the one on the bottom left-hand side is called Thinking Things. It's a bit of an older game. It was actually designed for younger people, but we find that some of our students really enjoy these games. So we just use a different variety. And then this one here, Claire spoke about circuits earlier on. So this is a game that's kind of at the latter end of circuits, so it's a bit more kind of based in reality. So the students asked to organise a number of people around a couple of tables. So it's like a bit like wedding planning, who do you sit, Uncle Bob beside Auntie Sue because they don't get on. So it's kind of looking at those kind of things. So as I say, we introduce different types of CRT, computerised. We also use paper and pencil CRT and group CRT. So again, in the workshops this afternoon, you'll get a chance to try out some of these games. So we allow our students to use the games that they're good at or that they enjoy, and normally those are the same. So what do we go on to? Oh, so also in phase 2, our students we invite our students to complete an assessment which is called the Audio Recorded Cognitive Screen, or ARCS for short. The ARCS is a simple and robust screening tool for the detection of cognitive impairment. So it's really easy to use. It involves an audio recorded about 30 minutes of a man talking you through instructions. So you have to sort of remember a list of words and do some other activities. So it's quick to score. You input the results into a calculator which generates a scaled score. And then we can feed that back to the students. So within the project, we've designed accessible feedback forms, because the forms that were produced by ARCS, maybe our students weren't sort of always understanding. So we created some accessible feedback forms, as well as offering our students sort of individual time to feedback the results of that assessment and to think about how the results of the assessment might influence CRT and might ultimately help them to work towards their goals. And again, there's a poster. Alex has done a poster on ARCS, so you're welcome to find out a bit more about ARCS after this. This is just an example of the end of phase reports that we give our students. So I guess it's at the end of the 6 weeks, we would just provide a report for them to take home with them. And it's really to kind of explicitly state everything that they've achieved in the project, because it's quite a short space of time when you think about 6 weeks. But actually, if they've been coming in 3 times a week, we're covering quite a lot of stuff. So often our students will kind of be like, oh, wow, look how much we've actually done here. We also invite a member of the NHS team back into the end of phase celebration, so they get to sort of share in some of the achievements of the students as well. And I suppose we find that by giving these reports, it kind of ties in that personalisation, but it also increases motivation. So hopefully, if a student's maybe attended 15 out of the 18 sessions, maybe their kind of goal next time is to maybe increase that. Okay, so bridging sessions. So bridging sessions, I guess this term was developed by Alice Medaglia over in America. And bridging sessions are group work that are designed to link the cognitive skills learned on the computer tasks to everyday life. So we can cover topics from what are cognitive skills, so what are thinking skills, what does cognitive remediation therapy or CRT stand for? So often our students, they don't know what it stands for. We've had some interesting thoughts on that. Someone thought it was cognitive retail therapy, which sounds interesting. So yeah, we have some group discussions based around what are thinking skills, how do we use them in everyday life, what does CRT help with, what strategies have you been using in the games, as well as having a number of more action-based exercises. So we have lots of different types of exercises, like planning a route around a zoo, a desert island problem-solving task, and also watching a news video, so maybe something from the BBC News website, and then we ask our students to how would you summarise that story to a friend? And there's a workshop this afternoon that I'm doing on bridging sessions, so you can find out more then. So phases 3 and 4. So educate your mind and know your mind. So phases 3 and 4 is a continuation of our group work, so our students are still coming in for 3 half days a week. Our students, by this point, are a lot more settled into the project, so their confidence is increased, and they're maybe willing to try and do a few more things. There's also more opportunity for more kind of contextual activities, so the work placements occur in phase 4, as well as mock interviews, and again, our students still completing their qualifications. We also encourage a bit more CRT use in these phases, so we're encouraging our students to access CRT from home. If they want to do that, they can log in from home, or they can also attend extra sessions, so we have a drop-in session that our students can come along to, so they can get a bit more kind of one-to-one time with a learning coach. So at this point, our students are a bit more able to kind of focus on the difficult games. So hopefully by this point, they're a little bit more comfortable with the strategies that they're using. And I suppose in these phases, we notice that this is the part where the kind of most cognitive learning and growth occurs. So learning coaches are really able to evaluate students' preferences, their task approach, their frustration tolerance, their ability to learn, monitor the difficult levels that they're maybe setting themselves, and really kind of ensure that the students are working just beyond their ability. So they're kind of, I guess it was that scaffolding approach that Claire talked about earlier. Okay, so just finally, a case study to just try to illustrate how we use CRT in Employer Mind. So I'm going to talk you through one of our students called Stephen, who was on the project. He's a 48-year-old male, and he has a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. So in phase 1, so how did he present in phase 1? So one of our learning coaches delivered phase 1 alongside his NHSOT. So Stephen was really kind of difficult to engage with in phase 1, I think it'd be fair to say. So he would often provide one-word answers. He was really tentative about the amount of information that he was giving away about himself. His mood was very low. His responses were quite slowed. I remember the learning coach at the time kind of saying, each week that he comes back, they were kind of surprised that he had actually came back, because I guess the feeling in the session was that he maybe wasn't enjoying himself. But he came back every week. He did that how do I think questionnaire, and he identified that his thinking skills difficulties were around concentrating. So he was finding that he couldn't concentrate on watching the TV like he had been able to before. The learning coach also noticed that there was that his frustration tolerance was quite low, so he'd get really kind of annoyed quite easily in the session. There were some anger issues as well, so he was worried about how he was going to act in the group, and in his words he said, I'm worried about kicking off in the next phase. You know, that was something that was a concern to him. He does have a forensic background around violence to others. He has worked in the past, but he lost his job due to his conviction. And he would love to work again, but he really doesn't think that he will be able to. And he almost wouldn't even really talk about that because he didn't see it as a possibility. So phase 2. So he did come on to phase 2. First week of phase 2, he presented as completely uninterested. We really thought at this point that we were going to lose him from the project. So one of the first sessions, he walked out halfway through without letting anyone else know. But he did come back in the next day, but he was saying things like, I don't like this CRT, I'm not doing it. I can't do it, what's the point in this? So I guess we were kind of thinking that this was quite a high-risk time for him in the project, that we might lose him. But he did complete his ARCS assessment as well in the first couple of weeks, and the deficits that the ARCS assessment highlighted was he had difficulties around memory and processing speed. So we decided we really needed to do something with Stephen, or otherwise we were going to lose him from our project. So we thought what we really need to do is kind of sit down with him and maybe model to him why we're using CRT and how it might help him. So we kind of said to him, come on, let's sit down, let's do it together. Because if you asked him to do it, he would say, no, I don't like it. So it was kind of like, come on, let's sit down together and we'll have a go at doing it. Okay, so the task that we decided that we would look at with them was this one here, which is called the Towers of Hanoi, which I'm sure some of you will be aware of. So the idea behind this game is that you have to recreate the the rings on these 3 pegs to look like the image up here. So there's a couple of rules you have to follow. You can only move 1 ring at a time. You can only move a small ring on top of a bigger one. And you also have to do it in the minimum number of moves, and there's a time limit. So there's quite a few things going on. So you can kind of see why he was maybe a bit apprehensive about that. So we said to him, okay, let's sit down, let's do this together. But before we do anything, before we make any moves, what I'd like us to do is to think about how we're going to approach this task. So we're going to make a plan. Why don't you get a bit of paper out and let's write down the first couple of steps? That might help. So, bear with us. Okay, so we started to chat a little bit about which ring we were going to move first. So he said, well, why don't we move this green one over on top of the yellow ring? But then if we do that, we can't free up the yellow one to put on top of the blue one. So another option would be moving the purple one first on top of the yellow ring. Then you're able to move the green one over, move the purple one, and then that frees up the yellow ring to start building up the stack again. Okay, so we did that in the optimum number of moves, and we therefore got 100%. Okay, so after we did that, we had a conversation about, well, let's think about what strategies we used, or what strategies did you use there? And he said, well, I didn't use any strategies, we just did it, didn't we? And I said, well, we did use a few strategies. We talked it through before we started. We made a plan. You wrote down the ring that you were going to move first. And we also took our time. We didn't rush into it. So if he'd moved the ring that he thought he would move first, we wouldn't have got 100%. So by taking our time, making a plan, that allowed us to get 100%. So that was like the penny dropping with Stephen. He was kind of like, I think I get why I'm doing this now. And he also said the next day that he'd went home and he'd started to think about the game and think about different ways that he could do it. And he came in saying, this is the first time I've felt competitive for a long time. But at the same time, he was also able to acknowledge that actually the game was really quite annoying. So that allowed us to have some conversations around, why is it annoying? And is it maybe annoying because it's difficult? And wouldn't it be great if you were able to kind of stick with that game, even though it was difficult, and use different strategies and see if you can move up to the next level? So how do we use that learning in a real life context? So we did have opportunity to do this. Stephen moved on to phase 3 of the project. His confidence was increasing, whereas before he was giving up on tasks really easily before he'd even started, he was staying with tasks. So during a group session, we were doing group CRT, our students were solving a problem, and he was standing up and writing on the whiteboard the solution to this problem. So he stood up in front of everybody else, wrote his solution to the problem, but it was wrong. And one of the other students in the class mentioned that it was wrong, or highlighted that it was wrong, sort of laughed at him. And that was him. He lost his temper, raised his voice, there was an argument, and he left the session. So we spoke to him later on that day to kind of reflect and to talk through the event. And his first reaction was, I'm actually really proud of myself. Before the course, it would have resulted in violence. I would have hit him. He says, so I'm really proud that I didn't do that. But at the same time, I've completely embarrassed myself in the project. I lost my temper and I can't do that. I can't subject everybody else in the group to me losing my temper. So there's no way I can come back. Thanks, but no thanks. I'm not coming back. So we were able to talk a little bit. Oh, and he said, it's been so bad this afternoon, Inga, that I've had to phone my CPN because she's coming round, we're going to talk about it. So I was like, great strategy, talking it through. That's really good. So what other strategies have you learned in CRT that you could maybe use with this situation? So I was able to kind of remind him of those and think about, try not to make a decision quickly. You don't have to make your decision today about not coming back to the group. Take your time, think about it, talk it through with someone, weigh up the pros and cons, write them down, make a plan. So he kind of left it over the weekend. He talked it through his CPN. One of our learning coaches called him back the following Monday, and he decided he was going to come back to the project. So that was a really kind of powerful kind of learning experience for him. And for us, actually. It was interesting. Okay. Oh, let me go back just one. So I guess just finally, CRT is really good at providing a bridge to self-efficacy by breaking down that spiral of feeling incompetent and like Stephen was doing in the case study, of just giving up. And as our students begin to experience success at the computer tasks that require attention and memory and problem solving and processing speeds, they begin to see themselves as competent individuals who can maybe achieve in their everyday goals that they set themselves. So CRT is not only enhances cognitive skills, but it also provides our students an experience of success, an experience of sticking with something when it gets tough. And therefore, it empowers our students to feel competent to tackle their everyday valued goals, like working towards employment. CRT provided within an employability project can be a really powerful step in the recovery process. Okay, so thanks very much everyone for listening. We probably, because we're running a wee bit behind, we probably don't have time for questions, but I guess we're now, there's time now for everyone to have a look at the posters, and we're also going to put on a presentation about some other aspects of CRT. So I will be, myself and the learning coaches will be at the posters, so please do come down and talk to us. Lunch, I think, is going to be served, is ready to be served now. So can I ask everybody to take your bags and jackets with you, because we're going to be rearranging this room for some of our workshops in the afternoon. But by the time you've got your lunch, you should be able to come back.